Welcome, friends. This is A Course in Miracles Palm Beach Study Group. Tonight we're on Chapter 9, Section 2, The Answer to Prayer. It's on page 163 in the book. Everyone who has ever tried to use prayer to ask for something has experienced what appears to be failure. This is not only true in connection with specific things that might be harmful, but also in connection with requests that are strictly in line with this course. The latter in particular might be incorrectly interpreted as proof that the course does not mean what it says. You must remember, however, that the course states, and repeatedly, that its purpose is the escape from fear. Let us suppose, then, that what you ask of the Holy Spirit is what you really want, but you are still afraid of it. Should this be the case, your attainment of it would no longer be what you want. This is why certain specific forms of healing are not achieved, even when the state of healing is. An individual may ask for physical healing because he is fearful of bodily harm. At the same time, if he were healed physically, the threat to his thought system might be considerably more fearful to him than its physical expression. In this case, he is not really asking for release from fear, but for the removal of a symptom that he himself selected. This request is, therefore, not for healing at all. Paragraph 3. The Bible emphasizes that all prayer is answered, and this is indeed true. The very fact that the Holy Spirit has been asked for anything will ensure a response. Yet it is equally certain that no response given by him will ever be one that would increase fear. It is possible that his answer will not be heard. It is impossible, however, that it will be lost. There are many answers you have already received, but have not yet heard. I assure you that they are waiting for you. Well, this is very enlightening, I think. And I think that what it's saying in terms of the fear is that we don't always understand or perceive the fear behind the petition that we're making. But Spirit, of course, Holy Spirit can, see right through us to the heart of the matter. And so it's up to Holy Spirit to know what answer to give us. But we're also told that, yes, every prayer is answered, but we may not hear that answer. But it's not lost. Eventually, we will come to understand. That's the way I read it. Are there any other thoughts or questions? Well, we'll go on then to paragraph 4. If you would know your prayers are answered, never doubt a Son of God. Do not question him and do not confound him, for your faith in him is your faith in yourself. If you would know God and his answer, believe in me, whose faith in you cannot be shaken. Can you ask of the Holy Spirit truly and doubt your brother? Believe his words are true because of the truth that is in him. You will unite with the truth in him, and his words will be true. As you hear him, you will hear me. Listening to truth is the only way you can hear it now and finally know it. So, first of all, when it says never doubt a son of God, a son of God is a person, as your brother, as it says later on. Can you doubt your brother? But I think it's more of the spiritual person, the spiritual self, and not the ego self. Any thoughts on this?
I agree with that.
Okay. Thank you. So let's go on. This is getting very interesting. Paragraph 5. The message your brother gives you is up to you. What does he say to you? What would you have him say? Your decision about him determines the message you receive. Remember that the Holy Spirit is in him, and his voice speaks to you through him. What can so holy a brother tell you except truth? But are you listening to it? Your brother may not know who he is, but there is a light in his mind that does know. This light can shine into yours, giving truth to his words and making you able to hear them. His words are the Holy Spirit's answer to you. Is your faith in him strong enough to let you hear? Okay, let's look at this a little more closely. The message your brother gives you is up to you. The reason it's up to you, I think, is because it all depends on how you look at your brother. If you look at your brother and you just see his ego self, well, then that's the message you're going to hear. But if you look at your brother and you see his spiritual self, if you recognize that she is a spiritual being, just like yourself, then that gives you a much different message. And then they ask, well, what does he say to you? Well, that depends again on how you're looking at him, how you perceive your brother. And what would you have them say? Well, as spiritual beings, we'd have them say, I love you. But your decision about him determines the message you receive. So when you see people as their ego selves and you judge them in that way, you're going to receive a much different message than if you see them as a fellow child of God, a fellow son of man, son of God, and a spiritual brother. And that's going to give you a whole other message. And then sentence 7 says, but are you listening to it? See, they've already told us, okay, well, the answer is given, but do you hear it? So there's a two-way street here. You ask, you're answered, but then do you hear it? Any questions, comments?
I have an example, but it's opposite. In other words, it's a friend of mine came to my house and was upset and was in ego. And I recognized this. And so I wanted to talk to her about it. And each time I made an attempt, I was blocked from her response, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I felt I was not, I felt I wasn't penetrating, getting my point across. But that was because I started slipping into ego there too. To make a long story really short, eventually we kept on having conversations. We kept on talking back and forth. And then just at one point, I said something to her and she went, oh, like she saw some light. I think that's what she saw, some light in the words that I was saying to her, and decided that, see, she was making all the decisions. I had already decided that I was going to plow into it. That was my decision. So I'm going off track here. And at the very end, she said, thank you, Helen. You put something in my mind. I thought it was really interesting, the words that she chose. You put something in my mind. Thank you for doing that. And she kind of switched around a little. She calmed down a little more. And it was all because of what I have learned in the process of doing the Course in Miracles and being part of the Course in Miracles, is what I was trying to communicate with her. And I'm thinking this is something that is talking about in this chapter, in this piece, the communication between two spiritual beings. I think both of us at some point slipped into ego, but would still be able to come out of it. And then the truth is always in the light. The light comes into the truth, or something like that. Thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for giving us your story. And yes, I think that's very relevant to what we're talking about, because you did not give up, even though you say you slipped into ego, but you did not give up on seeing her as a spiritual being,
Yeah.
and doing the best you could to communicate to her one spiritual being to another. And at first she could not hear you, but eventually she did start to hear you. And so progress was made. And that's the way it happens. It's just, it's one word at a time. People need to slowly come into a spiritual understanding. Very few people have the eureka, I found it moment where it just, like all of a sudden they were infused with this insight. And that's not usually how it happens. It's like baby steps, one little step at a time until we finally get to a point where it makes more sense than it doesn't, and we hear a little bit more than we have been. But
Thank you.
that last sentence of paragraph 5, sentence 11 asks, is your faith in him strong enough to let you hear?
Yeah. That's a really good question.
Yes. So let's go on to paragraph 6. You can no more pray for yourself alone than you can find joy for yourself alone. Prayer is the restatement of inclusion, directed by the Holy Spirit under the laws of God. Salvation is of your brother. The Holy Spirit extends from your mind to his and answers you. You cannot hear the voice of God, the voice for God in yourself alone, because you are not alone. And his answer is only for what you are. You will not know the trust I have in you unless you extend it. You will not trust the guidance of the Holy Spirit or believe that it is for you unless you hear it in others. It must be for your brother because it is for you. Would God have created a voice for you alone? Could you hear his answer except as he answers all of God's sons? Hear of your brother what you would have me hear of you, for you would not want me to be deceived. And of course, the speaker here is Jesus. So all the I's and me's refer to him. So again, there's this interaction here between you, me, and everyone, because as we've said many times, there's really only one of us. We are all connected. We are all collectively the child of God, the Son of God. And so all of our spiritual growth is dependent upon our understanding that everyone we see and hear and touch is a spiritual being just like ourselves. And the answer to prayer comes from Holy Spirit upon all of us. Paragraph 7. I love you for the truth in you, as God does. Your deceptions may deceive you, but they cannot deceive me. Knowing what you are, I cannot doubt you. I hear only the Holy Spirit in you, who speaks to me through you. If you would hear me, hear my brothers in whom God's voice speaks. The answer to all prayers lies in them. You will be answered as you hear the answer in everyone. Do not listen to anything else, or you will not hear truly. So that sentence two, your deceptions may deceive you. In other words, your ego mind is the deceiver. But they cannot deceive me. They cannot deceive spirit. And again, knowing what you are, you know, I don't recall the book ever saying knowing who you are. It's always what. It's never a who. And normally that's how we would speak. I know who you are, or I know, but they do that on purpose because knowing what you are, in other words, you are a spiritual being. That's what you are. It's also who you are, but they want to emphasize that. And it's clear in the language that's being used because you just hear that over and over and over again throughout the course. So do not listen to anything else except spirit, or you will not hear truly. Questions, comments? Paragraph 8. Believe in your brothers because I believe in you, and you will learn that my belief in you is justified. Believe in me by believing in them, for the sake of what God gave them. They will answer you if you learn to ask only truth of them. Do not ask for blessings without blessing them, for only in this way can you learn how blessed you are. By following this way, you are seeking the truth in you. This is not going beyond yourself, but toward yourself. Hear only God's answer in his sons, and you are answered. And what is the answer? Well, God has the same answer for all of us. It's love, it's peace, it's joy, it's wisdom. The answer is that we are his children. We are his child. We are spiritual beings. Paragraph 9. To disbelieve is to side against or to attack. To believe is to accept and to side with. To believe is not to be credulous, but to accept and appreciate. What you do not believe, you do not appreciate. And you cannot be grateful for what you do not value. There is a price you will pay for judgment, because judgment is the setting of a price. And as you set it, you will pay it. And again, that word judgment. So if we're judged with the ego, then we have thoughts about how, oh, that person is such and such and so and so. We have negative judgments against people. Oh, they're this. Oh, they're that. But when we do that, we're only judging ourselves because they are us. But when we judge from Spirit's point of view, then we judge all men equally. And that judgment is, you are a child of God, and so am I. You are Spirit, and so am I. That's the only judgment we need have. It doesn't matter what appearances are in the ego world. They can have all different kinds of appearances. But it's like really, really important for us to, in order for us to grow spiritually, to really be vigilant about how we think about other people, about what our judgment is about other people. Any questions, comments? Paragraph 10. If pain is equated with getting, you will set the price low, but demand a high return. You will have forgotten, however, that to price is to value, so that your return is in proportion to your judgment of worth. If pain is associated with giving, it cannot be perceived as loss, and the reciprocal relation of giving and receiving will be recognized. The price will then be set high because of the value of the return. The price for getting is to lose sight of value, making it inevitable that you will not value what you receive. Valuing it little, you will not appreciate it, and you will not want it. In other words, place a high value on everybody, including yourself. Paragraph 11. Never forget then that you set the value on what you receive and price it by what you give. To believe that it is possible to get much for little is to believe that you can bargain with God. God's laws are always fair and perfectly consistent. By giving, you receive. But to receive is to accept, not to get. It is impossible not to have, but it is possible not to know you have. The recognition of having is the willingness for giving. And only by this willingness can you recognize what you have. What you give is therefore the value you put on what you have, being the exact measure of the value you put upon it. And this, in turn, is the measure of how much you want it. Now, to some, this may sound like a lot of double talk, but it isn't when you understand, the oneness and the process that everything we give, we receive. And if we give high value, we receive high value. And if we give low value, that's what we're going to get back as low value. So whatever you do comes back on you. This is like the same thing as the law of karma. So, and because there's only one of us, whatever you give, you're giving to yourself. Whatever you receive, you're receiving from yourself. So, and also we're not talking about giving and receiving in the ego world. We're talking about giving and receiving in the spiritual world. Again, we're talking about getting and receiving love and forgiveness and peace and joy, the things of the Father. One last paragraph. You can ask of the Holy Spirit then only by giving to him, and you can give to him only where you recognize him. If you recognize him in everyone, consider how much you will be asking of him and how much you will receive. He will deny you nothing because you have denied him nothing. And so you can share everything. This is the way and the only way to have his answer, because his answer is all you can ask for and want. Say then to everyone, because I will to know myself, I see you as God's son and my brother. Because I will to know myself, I see you as God's son and my brother. And thus we have come to the end of our reading for tonight. So I open the floor for comments, questions, discussion.
I particularly love these two verses. I think I'm going to have to read them again and again. But it just speaks. For the longest time, I was trying to see God in everyone. And I wasn't always successful. I'm a broken woman. However, these passages are so important because of the value that one would have in themselves. And so it was difficult for me to see other people with value because I didn't see it in myself. And so once I began such a great a relationship with God on this level, did I begin to change. So again, thank you very much. I just really, really like this, particularly these last two paragraphs.
Well, thank you for your honest response, Helen. And it's true. I tell people, I said, when you get up in the morning, you should go into the bathroom, look in the mirror and say, "Good morning, God."
Good advice.
And the more you think of yourself as a spiritual being, the more you'll think of everyone else as a spiritual being, and vice versa. The more you think of everyone else as a spiritual being, the more you'll think of yourself as a spiritual being. So it goes around full circle. Again, what you do comes back on you. And that's true for both negative and positive. If you think hateful thoughts of other people, you're going to wind up hating yourself. So, anyone else have anything to say? Well, I thank you for your participation tonight. Oh, yes, Jill?
Just thank you. Yeah, I've just not been, talked to her.
Right, I understand. It's difficult when you've experienced a bodily sickness. So I hope you're much better by next week, Jill.
Thank you, John. And I enjoyed listening to it.
Oh, good. Alrighty then, friends, let's have a moment of silence and we'll stop the recording.